Some folks will like you and some that just won't. Some that stay real and some that just don't. Trying to fit in will only take you so far. You'll never find home trying to change who you are. So don't spend your whole life trying to be what you ain't. You can't hide your heart with a new coat of paint. You think they'll accept you, I promise they can't. It's just be who you are, forget what they think. So just be who you are and forget what they think.
Welcome to Vet with a Mic, content driven by veterans issues. So today we're going to talk to just a fascinating guy. I wanted to do an episode like this for at least a month now because I really know how much we utilize humor in our life in uniform. And to talk to BJ here, who is a fascinating guy who's got a really powerful story, but has found comedy and creative pursuits as a way of bridging the great divide that is the transition. So BJ, man, how you doing, man?
Doing well. Yourself, Ryan?
Man, I can't complain. I just felt ginger ale all over myself right before we started recording. So yeah, I assume like this ought to be just swimming. It's great.
Yeah, of course. You know, it's been obviously it's been interesting as we're now in our second year of COVID. So just and I'm out in Los Angeles, so like everything's are always changing. The question is, what's going to happen, and will my life get back on track? I think a lot of people are in the same situation.
Yeah. I know that is something that we'll probably start to evaluate life as pre-COVID, post-COVID eventually, just because there's been so much change that has happened due to this virus. But let's talk a little bit about, because how does your performance arts impact your life right now? I mean, I know that COVID has got to put a little kibosh on some of the things that you're able to do.
It does. A lot of stuff that I'm doing right now is virtual. Teaching and performing has been virtual, with the exception of me flying home over the holidays back to Missouri. And I did some shows back in my hometown of St. Louis, which were in person. But to really dive deep, I guess, into like my background and how I got into the arts, I suppose we got to kind of like, crack the egg open of my history. So I went to school for theater. I'm an actor, comedian, TV host. I live in Los Angeles. I am your traditional Hollywood actor. It wasn't until later in life when I decided to join the Air Force Reserve. And in the middle of my reserve duty, I ended up getting diagnosed with testicular cancer. But through that diagnosis and then getting put through a medical evaluation board, getting placed on temporary medical retirement, and being enrolled in the Air Force's Wounded Warrior program, not to be confused with the Wounded Warrior Project. This is a DoD program for wounded, ill, and injured service members. Every branch has their Wounded Warrior element or regiment, battalion, whatever they call it. But in that program, they had a wellness and resiliency portion, and that really kind of kickstarted me to start teaching it for wellness and resiliency. I had already been teaching for performance art, as an actor, teaching at the Second City. I'm a Second City conservatory graduate. I teach at the Second City in Hollywood.
Now, look, you've done at least a couple of things there right off the bat that we need to put in context and unpack a little bit, because which I get it. You don't want to like brag on yourself at all. And so just the other day, you sent me a clip where you're interviewing like Christian McCaffrey. So you do some really cool stuff. This is, and I know, like I said, it's going to come across a little phony if you were bragging on yourself like that. So I'll take the opportunity to brag on you. And even the Second City thing that you just mentioned there, that's kind of a big deal within the funny realm.
Totally.
So, but now I know that we talked about like Aykroyd and a few other people who
Yeah.
are in that orbit. So who came out of the Chicago Second
Oh
City?
man.
Is that where Bill Murray came from? Because that's I love
Bill
Bill
Murray,
Yeah.
Amy Poehler, Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Stephen Colbert,
So all my favorite
Jon
people.
Stewart. Yeah, so many. Gilda Radner, Rick Moranis,
Hmm.
Steve Martin. So many great people came out of either the Second City Chicago, or a lot of them even came out of Second City Toronto.
Yeah, that's where Dan came out of. We talked about.
Right, and that
I
was
said
also
Dan like I know him.
right. You and Dan hanging out. We'll have him on the show next week.
Yeah, it's
But
chilling.
a lot of those guys not only came Chicago, Toronto, or Los Angeles, but that was also for our older vet brothers and sisters out there might be familiar with Second City TV, which also came out of there. And a lot of, obviously, listen, if you have put yourself out there as a comedian or a comedic actor, or do any sort of comedy in any sense, then you most likely you most likely have studied at the Second City. And that was my background and getting involved in that. And through that, though, and learning what improv was, which I know this is a whole deeper thing, so stick with us so that you could see how my story of my cancer stuff really kind of drove me into more, not just performance, being an actor and doing comedy, and how that helps me, but really how me extending my arm out to people, fellow wounded warriors, and how that is really what nurtures my heart, and it gives me another purpose to serve in a different capacity.
Yeah. No, for sure. Because that's one of the things that we talk a lot about here is finding meaning in life just beyond the uniform. And, it's a funny little anecdote between you and I. Like when we had first connected, it was funny. Like we end up knowing somebody too that we had in common, which was through the Wounded Warrior Air Force edition. That was really one of those things that, man, the universe is really small sometimes, especially since he lives right down the road from me too. So it's even funnier. But
that is pretty interesting.
Yeah. I agree that there's something to be said about finding ways to process some, let's just say, heavy material in creative ways. And I know that a lot of the times performance arts can be, I don't know, labeled a little shallow, or there's a certain derogatory sense that people have, but there really is something that can be therapeutic in it. And I know that Justin, which is one of our previous interviews, I think he was a member of the resiliency training as well in the Air Force. So this is something that is the Air Force, it must do pretty well. Because I know we didn't have anything like this in the Navy, not that I'm familiar of.
Right. So, like I mentioned earlier, every branch of the military has a wounded warrior element or battalion or whatever, right? Which takes care of their wounded, ill, and injured who are either going through a med board, who have just gone through a med board, or have been triggered but not yet initiated the process of a med board. So, a lot of them focus on like adaptive sports, and we could talk forever about the adaptive sports side. And I was doing the military adaptive sports stuff at first when my cancer first happened, and upon my relapse when I got in the program. But the wellness and resilience, and I guess this was the actor in me and the artist in me who really believes in what art can do to help people. So whether it was a cathartic experience for me, or people use that process as a catharsis for their healing, the Air Force had comedy, which now I teach the applied improv comedy. So if you've ever seen like Whose Line, think of that, but it's focused not on the performance and like doing a show. It's more the psychological well-being, focus, more resiliency skills and life skills that are gained through play. I mean, for lack of a better term, like I just want to play. And they also do like journaling. They have doodling. They starts with Zentangle, and all these different things that were a part of it as well. So during the day, you would go do adaptive sports. And then in the evening, you had optional evening resiliency workshops. At first, it just started as like, hey, we have these optional evening resiliency workshops that this sports psychologist, Dr. Aaron Moffat, that he stood up in the program. It has since grown because so many people said, yes, I love doing the sports, or I love doing the ambassador program. I love doing the empowerment and transition, the business boot camp. So these are all separate, parts of it that spring out of AFW2. But people said, I really want to do more resiliency. So now they have set up a designated track where people for a week, when they go to these care events, are able to actually dig in to these healing arts. Rock to Recovery, former lead guitarist of Korn, Wes Geer, teams up with them, his nonprofit, where they teach them not only to play music, but to write songs that are based on how they are healing as a group. So there's so much great things that are happening. And as far as I know, the Air Force is the only one that has that designated track. But we also do joint programs. So just a few months ago, we did an event in San Antonio with the Air Force Wounded Warrior program, and I was able to work with some Marines and show them, applied improv and play games and have fun and all that.
So when we first talked, you told me about how improv really can work as a model for people to interact with the world.
Totally.
And whenever you said that, I was like, man, that really hits home for me, because half of what you do in mental health arenas is you provide people with models to use in the world. Like they get to try out social skills or different approaches to thinking in the therapeutic space to use out there in their life. So there's two things that we talk a lot about here, obviously, is putting yourself out there and being in uncomfortable positions. Because it's the only way to grow.
Yep.
Right. So it sounds like to me, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, that this improv training is just that, putting yourself into an uncomfortable position where there is no script. There is nothing for you to you have to think on your feet. And that's got to be terrifying to some people. Yeah.
For a lot of people, you're exactly right, Ryan. It can be very nerve-wracking and very anxiety-riddled process to even go to an improv class. As I'm sure we've all heard this example that somebody would rather be in the casket at a funeral than being the person given the eulogy, right?
Yeah.
Because they're so scared of public speaking, right? So let me tell you this: in improv, in what we call applied improv, so it's a little bit different, right? We're focusing on the non-performance side. One of my favorite things to tell people is that we are strengthening the uncertain tolerance, right? We're getting you comfortable with the uncomfortable. So yes, I teach for, regular folks who want to get up and do comedy, at the Second City or wherever I teach at, with Veterans in Media and Entertainment, which is another nonprofit that I work with, and we teach classes there. But these are people that want to go up and either get into improv or sketch comedy, either professionally, or they just want to have it for the artistic merit, right? But as I mentioned, applied improv, we're just working for the focus of either resiliency, like I do for Air Force Wounded Warrior, or you apply it from the corporate side. So put on your business hat. And why would someone want to take an improv class? Well, how about team building, trust, thinking outside the box, creativity, all of collaboration and that whole process. So when I shift it back towards resiliency for Air Force Wounded Warrior, these wounded warriors and their caregivers who are often there with them are through play, right? Like play. I mean, that, Ryan, we could talk for years on just play, right? Just being a big kid.
But but Anna Freud, Sigmund's daughter, actually talked a lot about play therapy. Yeah. I mean,
what is the importance of play? Like, what do we get from play? How do you grow from play? You mentioned earlier that you don't really grow unless you challenge yourself, right? One of the great improv people that I know of, Amy Poehler, and I believe this is her quote. If it's not, I'll figure out who said it. But in the improv world, I've always heard it was her that said, the scene, aka your life, begins the moment you step out of your comfort zone, right? So if you challenge yourself and step forward, then you're going to be able to grow. And another thing that we work on when we do that, and this is all in a safe environment, right? Obviously, like, why would I want to scare people away from the art that I love, right? So I'm going to teach you very simple games, exercises, focus on the theory. But another great thing that we tell people all the time is step up to the ledge, to the edge of, of the building, the stage. Be willing to step on the stage or fall off, right? And trust that your team is going to be there to back you up, because as you said, it's non-scripted. So you're not going to be able to rely on a script, but you're going to have to rely on your team to have your back. And as we say in the military all the time, like in the Air Force, we say, I'll never leave an airman behind, right? I will never leave a soldier behind, so on and so forth. But in my case, I think I lost a little bit of that faith in believing that when my cancer happened, because they put me through a med board. And it wasn't that it wasn't that I was sick. Like, I knew I was sick. The problem was they didn't have my back to retain me, even though my providers were telling me that I have the best cancer ever to have, right? I mean, nobody wants cancer, but like, if you had one, this one's a good one, right?
Yeah. Hey, can we just 1 second?
Sure.
Because there's something that is totally related to that you said the other day when you were talking to me. And I didn't realize that was a true statement when you said it. You said that more men annually get testicular cancer than women do breast cancer.
Correct. In the age bracket of 18 to 40. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm a 2-time testicular cancer survivor. That does not mean that I'm a flat bagger. I still have one in there. So I'm still hanging in there as long as I can. Right. Exactly. It is safe to say I'm half as nuts as I used to be. So that is true. But yeah, for testicular cancer in America, for the age bracket of 18 to 40, more men will get diagnosed with testicular cancer than women of breast cancer. Yet, and think about this, guys, and ladies that are out there. How often do you go to a doctor's office, dads, moms, that take their boys to the pediatrician? Do you see a sign on the wall that says, like, check your balls, son? When you in health class, in gym, even when you go to get a physical for sports, has a provider ever told you, whether that's, your general, provider, whatever, your GP, have they ever said to you, make sure you do a self-exam once a month, right? But yet you see signs for breast cancer everywhere. And I'm not picking sides. I'm just saying we need to get more awareness out there. And so I serve on the board for the Testicular Cancer Awareness Foundation, which is the largest testicular cancer nonprofit in America. And our big thing is just simply self-exams. And like, it literally saves lives. So as silly as it sounds, when you're watching the game, Super Bowl's coming up, check your
Give
boys.
a little self-exam.
Yeah.
I guess we'll never be we'll never be in danger of penile cancer, because
it's
probably a lot of self-exams happen.
Right. Exactly.
That's to your point. That is true. We don't have the, we have women's cancer awareness stuff that happens all the time, but we don't really have the blue ribbon, I guess, that's out there. The NFL doesn't go blue, right?
Sure.
Hey, what's the mortality rate for that? Do you know?
I don't know the exact numbers, but I do know that since the 80s, when Dr. Lawrence Einhorn, who's at Indiana, he's still practicing, by the way, an amazing man. He's like a legend in the testicular cancer community. He took that morbidity rate and really slashed it. I don't know the numbers. That's why I'm not going to say, but he took the numbers and slashed it when he created carboplatin, which is the actual chemo drug that I got, which was specific towards, testis cancer. The drawback to that, to getting that carboplatin, is that it's platinum based. So that platinum gave me high frequency hearing loss. So that was another reason why, when I went through my med board, it was like, well, your hearing's rough and you can't be a flight medic because, you got to wear the headset. And so,
So like we talked to John a few episodes back, and he was in pararescue. Is a flight medic similar to that?
They do a lot of the same medical training, but PJs are, door kicking, real serious.
Yeah.
I was just a 4-0, just a regular base, medic. But
Don't say the word just.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Like, I'm not trying to play up anything. In
Yeah.
fact,
Yeah.
like, and we haven't even gotten to talk about my short time in service, unfortunately,
Yeah.
due to my cancer. But, yeah, I'm very and this is something that I'm just going to throw out there. And I know that we had dabbled on it when you and I
Yeah.
talked before, but I'm proud of my service, but I still have a lot of issues around it because I lost a lot of my identity and I wasn't able to really serve the way that I wanted to. And
Yeah.
listen, even the intro song that you have, it's basically saying like, fuck, what everybody else
That's
thinks.
actually that is the unedited version. That's what, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's easy to say that, and I understand the point behind it, but it's not like that's not easy. And I know that that
Yeah.
will always be a challenge for me because I got medically retired, that I separated in a way that I didn't intend to happen. And I dealt with so much just so many
Abandonment.
issues. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, abandonment
Yeah.
on myself. And like, I
Yeah.
lost so much faith and my self-confidence went down. And then, I mean, I'll be honest with you, and I'll just throw this out there to any other vets that are out there. And listen, you have your opinion. I have never lied about anything that I've ever done. And I'm very open about it so that I can hopefully help other people. But I do get messages from people that say like, you're not a veteran and you never deployed and you barely, did anything in the military. You're barely even a medic, and listen, I have just shy of a year and a half, in service, a full year on active orders from the Air Force Reserve. But I totally understand that like people have this perception. That's not to say I should I be ashamed of my service, when I helped people, when I did work in the hospital, when I did work on the ambulance service, when I did perform CPR on a woman that came into the ER, like, no, but it's still hard to
So
deal with some of those things.
there's a couple different things there. Number one, we talk a little bit about transition, obviously, and having the choice to transition, when to transition, how you want to transition, whether or not you can plan and adapt accordingly or fail to altogether. That was probably my case. I thought I had a plan, but you're right. There is something that is particularly ostracizing about not having the choice to transition. And whether it's force reduction or there's some discipline action that happens, whatever it is, those are things that we really take with us into that great divide that is the transition process. So in saying that, man, I really want to be sensitive to that. But also, we get so much of our identity tied up in whatever we do in the uniform, where we were, like what are the what are the events that we define our service by. So 85% of veterans they're not in jobs that are combat related, right? 15% are combat jobs. Only about 15% of those have combat interactions.
Right.
So I think we kind of internalize this idea of, did we do enough? And there's a lot of different reasons why that might be. Maybe it's media representations. We see things, just represent the extreme minority of military experiences, and we compare our service against that. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But when I talk to door kickers in Iraq, they do the same shit, man.
Oh, of course.
They go, yeah, I mean, there were people who did more than me. Because of the things that happen to you in the uniform. Because I mean, cancer is just something that happens to you. It's not like you can take ownership or responsibility for getting sick. That may change your perspective about your control in that moment, and you may feel a little guilty about things. And I think a lot of us feel that way just generally about getting out. We feel like we're abandoning our brothers and sisters. And then once we decide to get out, the uniform goes
Right.
later. And
Yeah.
that just makes you feel like so much worse because Adrian, we just talked to like a couple of weeks ago, Force Recon Marine.
Mm-hmm.
And he had injuries that if he got a mild physical contact again, he would probably be paralyzed. So he had to leave the uniform. And here's this guy doing all the high speed stuff. And the Marines went, sorry, dude, you're no longer useful to us.
Right.
And he said that was one of the things that he struggled with the most was he felt abandoned too.
I understand that. Yep.
Yeah. And here is this guy had so much training. He had so much skin in the game to his Marine Corps identity. He's a brilliant guy. He started the Sheepdog program, which is a mental health program that specifically focuses in on military and first responder issues. Great guy. If you haven't checked that episode out, please do. But I hear what you're putting down, man. And it's something that a lot of us struggle with is feeling abandoned by the uniform and then feeling ill prepared for life after the uniform.
That's true. You know, and I was older when I joined the Air Force Reserve. You know, I was a lot older. I was the oldest in my BMT in basic training.
Oh, you're 26.
Yeah, 26. I enlisted at 35 into the Air Force Reserve. 35. So, mind you, I had volunteered in Civil Air Patrol. That's kind of what really kind of got me to want to finally enlist. After, you know, I had a full-time acting career in Hollywood. Everything was going fine. You know, I was teaching at Second City. I had been blessed to like host some spring break stuff down in Panama City Beach with MTV and Maxim Magazine for a number of years, and was on Jimmy Kimmel. You know, I had some pretty decent opportunities, but I kept looking over my shoulder, wishing that I would have enlisted. Stepfather's retired Army. My brother's a Marine. My grandfather's World War II Navy combat vet. You know, so all of my uncles are Marines. So like I wanted to follow in that family tradition.
Yeah.
But I was also kind of the black sheep of my family where I'm the artist. I don't have like a regular job. Like I have a dream and I have to go follow this dream.
Yeah.
But after doing Civil Air Patrol for like 10 years, you know, volunteering, you know, doing air crews, I'm also a private pilot. And I thought, you know what, it really is time to do this. So I enlisted at 35. I say all of that because when I came out, you know, following my temporary medical retirement, at that point it was temporary. Even though I didn't have a ton of time in, I came back different than when I went in. And I feel that I just wasn't able to accomplish the things that I wanted to do. Like, I suppose we as medics, and at the time that I went through, Navy corpsmen and Air Force medics were in the same program together at Fort Sam. And I'll be honest, I didn't even want to be a medic. I wanted to do public affairs, which is what I did in Civil Air Patrol. I wanted to be a public affairs officer, but to get a package in that late to commission was kind of a pain in the ass. So they said, well, enlist and then get your foot in the door and then, you know, figure that out, get in a unit or whatever. I knew I couldn't go full time because I had a full-time acting career. So I just wanted something to like bounce between the acting stuff. And when I came back and I started to, not only was I dealing with cancer and figuring out, would I be allowed to return to the Air Force Reserve? Is my cancer going to come back? How are they going to reevaluate me? Do I actually want to return? It was always my hope to return until my cancer relapsed a year later while I was on temporary retirement. But I just had so much going on. Here I am at 36, you know, and my life is completely different than it was a year ago. I mean, it's crazy. And I think all of that to be said, that when I joined Air Force Wounded Warrior and got involved in that program and then I got the opportunity to start teaching and took a contract to come on staff as a contractor to teach improv, I started to feel like that I found my home again, and that I had faith in the belief that the Air Force was doing the right thing like, I understand they were doing the right thing for me. The military as a whole was doing the right thing, because like, this man is sick, he needs treatment, he needs to do his thing, and then we'll have him back. But I guess it was hard to see that because
you felt disposable.
Yeah. So, but it gave me purpose to get back in and do that. And that was really my drive. And now I feel like I'm blending my military experience, my medic heart to continue to serve and help people heal, and my life as an artist, and blended those now teaching the improv stuff.
So you mentioned feeling different, right? So could you unpack that a little bit? Do you mean, because once you enlist and once you go through that transition, you're indoctrinated into the new culture, you really don't feel the same connection to people that you did before. It's a paradigm shift. It's a worldview shift.
Yeah.
Especially the more experiences you have, you live overseas or you go deployments downrange. It's really hard to connect with people again from outside of the uniform community. Is that what you're kind of referring to, or is this just also combined with the cancer?
I think it was a combination of all of that. The biggest thing was this big hole in my heart from the loss of identity and the inability to complete the things that I had dreamt of doing. I mean, when I finished my Air Force medic program, mind you, I just finished chemotherapy. And I still completed my medic program. Then I started my clinical rotations, and I'm finally applying the things that I struggled to do because I was so sick, and dealing with so much that they had to keep putting me. This had nothing to do with my ability to pass the test. This had to do because I was sick. So they had to keep re-putting me in other classes. And finally I finished as a class leader.
No, man, you're a tough ass dude.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. I know I've had a couple people in my family who's had to go through some stuff like that. And it is a full commitment battle every day. And then to try to also deal with, I know that the military is important, but it may have seemed pretty arbitrary at the time, at least a little less important. But they almost don't treat you that way because, this is mission first, right? And this is I'm sure that just being able to say you finished that, I don't know who said that about you're not really one of us. The hell with that. You went through that training while taking chemo, fighting cancer. Screw that guy, man. Like you're my brother.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah. I think there was, and I say all of this right here and where I am in my story right here towards the end of 2016. This isn't even the worst part, because the worst part was when I relapsed a year later while I was on temporary medical retirement.
Yeah.
It compounded everything on top of the fact that a woman I was dating at that time when my cancer relapsed stopped seeing me when I was in the middle of treatment. So like that was hard on me. My part-time job of 12 years that I returned back to when I finished my orders and I came back home, I was in the middle of treatments and they let me go. In my relapse. So it was so much to figure out what was going on. And, obviously I changed, right? Because I was living new experiences.
Yeah.
There were so many things that I had never in my life felt clinically. And this is, I guess, coming from a vocational nurse and, former Air Force medic. I had never felt that I was depressed before. Like I never saw any reason to believe that. I was 35, 36 years old. And now all of a sudden I started to see things changing in me because of everything. I was getting anxious and I'm biting my fingernails and I couldn't sleep at night. And this, again, my first cancer experience when I was on active orders, yeah, it sucked, but like I just felt, oh, I'm in the best shape of my life and I'm going to get through it. Everything's fine. And then when I got put through my med board, that was the first time that I tell people, like, I noticed that I started to like circle the drain. I kept having like recurring thoughts. That's never happened to me, Ryan. I
Yeah.
never, like, I was always Mr. Bubbly, super happy, whatever. Then I got put through med board. So like that sucked. I had to come back home and readjust to civilian life, figure out what the hell's the VA. I'm a veteran now. What is that all
Yeah.
about? Like, that's weird. Like so that
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
And then my cancer relapsed, which brought up everything else because I felt like the boogeyman came out of the closet.
Yeah.
And then I had to go through treatments, and then I was mentioning the relationship that I was in at the time that finished, and then got let go from my job. And then the Air Force said, hey, you're still sick, so we're going to put you on temporary retirement for another year and a half. So then the anxiety of, well, what happens next year? Can I return? Will I have TRICARE? Like, it was just so much. But I will say, all of this, when I look back and finally I'm able to step back and like, I'm still dealing with everything. Don't get me wrong. This will be a lifelong thing. And by the way, I still have 1 more year to go in remission before I'm considered cancer free. I feel like everything's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
But I say all of this as I step back and look, and what I have learned, and this is not easy, and I do understand that this is a challenge. So if you are still struggling with stuff, like maybe a tip that really Dr. Moffitt, the sports psychologist I was telling you about in the wellness and resiliency side, he said, instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask yourself, why is this happening for me? And then I saw it that way, and I started seeing all the opportunities that came simply out of the fact that I got cancer while I was in the military. Then I got enrolled in this program, like all of these positive things that came out of it. And it gave me another, while I would never want to go through the cancer stuff again, it is an absolute blessing.
Yeah.
How weird is that to say?
Yeah, I think a lot of us feel that way. Because we see how life-changing the uniform is. I mean, I was just a poor kid from East Tennessee, man. And now look, I've been able to go to school and do some really great stuff. I never would have had those opportunities. Those doors would have never opened to me.
Right.
Now, some doors did open, and because of my let's just say poor decision making at the time, like I blew those opportunities. But the military, as much as I feel ambivalent about it, and there's parts that like I really didn't like, there is so much that it has given to me, the uniform has, that I go, my life is totally changed for the better. Even though, I did deal with some struggles in and out of the uniform, but man, it has just brought me so much. It's brought me a community that I really feel connected to. It's brought me, like you said, just those everyday things, like having the VA to fall back on if you need them. It's something that you would have never had if you didn't serve. And so there's a lot of these positive things that happen for you. And it is, however dark it may feel, there's just so many benefits that your life has now after the uniform. And I think the tendency for us to get, let's even say, bitter about the uniform and going through that grieving process of leaving the military orbit, there's just, once you get a little clarity to it, a little bit of distance, you look back and go, man, my life is remarkably better now. It has launched me into a different social sphere. Yeah.
That being said, you have to be the person to be willing to accept that, whether that's the help from the VA or to get yourself connected. And if you are somebody who you feel that you missed that, I think the number one thing that everybody always says is like, it's the camaraderie, right? Well, I'm very connected to my American Legion here in Hollywood, and Post 43, which is one of the largest in the country. It is not just some good old boys club that you sit around and drink at. They have so many things that are happening that gave me a community, being involved in AFW2 gave me a community. I was able to lead the Improv for Veterans program because I ended up joining the military at Second City. So what a great opportunity, when you look at it. But you have to know what's out there. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. And, there's, just to kind of go back to the improv and the acting thing, we don't really have a lot of time in the uniform for self-exploration, right? To find the things in which we want to do, hobbies. You came in later, so you had already cultivated that part of you. But we talk a lot about Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl's book, on this show, because he spoke about 3 ways to find meaning in life. Because he had this really terrible story. He was a Holocaust survivor. I mean, he saw some of the worst part of human suffering that has ever existed on the planet. And he came out with this perspective of, this is how you find meaning in life. First of all, he took a rather Buddhist approach that life is suffering. And sometimes just enduring the suffering is all the meaning you need, right? Because I know that a lot of people who are struggling with cancer, they have a complete paradigm shift. They just realize how fragile and temporary life is. And they have a much more sweet perspective to it. They just take every day as a blessing. And that's really all we really can do. Is life is temporary, and you have to just take on life every day as it comes to you. But he talks about doing a worthwhile goal, connecting with other people, and creative pursuits are the ways in which he outlined finding meaning in life. So I say all that to say this. We all know the worthwhile goal part, right? We struggle with our occupations and finding that identity. But when you focus in on developing a part that's creative in your pursuit, you don't really realize that opens you up to an entire community of people. Right. And that you just feel connected to them because you all love the same craft or the same activity. And you just feel so much more grounded in life, knowing that you've got all these people that love doing the same thing you do. And so, it may be uncomfortable to step out there and be in this uncomfortable space of improv. But when you see there's so many people around you that are willing to catch you when you fall, there's just something profoundly, important and meaningful that can be established in those spaces.
Absolutely. And there's so many creative outlets. My buddy Chris here in Los Angeles, Christopher Lavaro, he's an Iraq Army combat vet. He runs Warriors for Peace Theater, and they do veteran Shakespeare. Some people say, I don't even want to get out there and do a show. So maybe they just do the workshops. And Armin Shimmerman, who played Quark on Deep Space Nine, is one of our Shakespeare coaches. And he, along with a lot of other very well-known Shakespearean actors, come in and work with vets for free to get them to do this creative outlet. Maybe they do a show. They did Julius Caesar right before the pandemic with veterans and civilians. But that, for some people, not only is a big step, but something different that perhaps they might not have tried. So do look out there and see what it's sort of recreational therapy. I know the VA has plenty of those. And if I could pitch, look up the Armed Services Arts Partnership. I sit on the leadership board. I sit on the Artist Council for the Armed Services Arts Partnership, and they teach improv and storytelling for free for veterans. There are so many. Mission Warriors is another one, missionwarriors.org. So many. If you're getting into some sort of art, reach out to me.
Yeah. And what is the one Adam Driver does? I know that he's got.
That's Arts in the Armed Forces. Arts in the Armed Forces.
Okay.
And if anyone from Arts in the Armed Forces is out there, holler at me. I definitely want to get involved. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. Now, do you have to still be in the uniform to work with arts in the armed forces? I know it's not your program. I don't know.
Yeah. No, well, that's because I looked into whether I was going to teach or just any way that I could be an advisor or whatever. Obviously, I'd love to teach improv for the program, but I think he has both because they also help out dependents and things like that.
Yeah. Which, the military orbit includes so many people, like you said, dependents, like children. And I think that that's something that we may neglect a little bit, that when you're a veteran, it's not just your problem, it's your family's problems.
Mhm.
You know, it's not just you're feeling isolated and disconnected. Your family may also feel that they feel estranged from you as well. So I don't know. I mentioned that just to say that you know, you got to integrate all parts of yourself, and that includes like your family, your spouses, your children, because it's tough work. Yeah.
And that's your community too. That way you
Yeah.
have, right. Building
Yeah.
community is such an important thing. And listen, I'm an improv nerd, so I apologize that a lot of what I talk about is improv, but it really has become my life.
It's all right. Yeah.
But improv as a whole, generally speaking, I believe improvisers are very kind, caring people. Because we have to be, because nobody from the audience is going to come help us. This is not stand-up comedy where it's one person who has memorized material. Yes, they might play in there a little bit, but it's basically memorized material. So that's why the collaboration and the playfulness with other people is so important. And let me give you something objective. I'm going to scoot close to my camera here, see if you guys can see this. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not, Ryan. So let me see if you guys can see this. Can you see those words right there?
It says yes and, right?
Correct. So right over there by my giant cat tree, going into my kitchen, the words are yes and. That's the rule of improv. It's 2 words: yes, comma, and ... That, if you want to know the rule to improv, if you want to know what makes improv comedy work, and why when you see Ryan Stiles and Colin Mockery and Wayne Brady seem to be so fast up there on stage, and you think, I can't do that, or when your life is getting crazy and you want to see how I apply this to my students with Air Force Wounded Warrior, it is those words right there, which is yes and. To accept is to say yes, and then the word and, which means to add information onto it. In other words, put one foot in front of the other and move forward. In a scene, so we apply that in scene work, if I say, hey, Dad, if Ryan and I are on stage and I say, hey, Dad, here's a cupcake, you have to automatically assume and say, yep, that I'm Dad now, and my son is trying to give me a cupcake. He's holding a cupcake right there. You can't deny the gift that I gave you, which is who you are, who I am, what the scenario is, and then you add information onto it. So maybe you reply with, oh, thanks, son. Thank you for that blueberry muffin, cupcake, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? And that way you accept and move forward. And that is something that I tried to instill and show to my students using the philosophy of improv.
I just want to, I don't mean to interrupt you. I just want to say something really quickly. Yeah. I just felt terrified. Just
Did you really?
Yeah, I was like, oh shit, what am I supposed to say? I don't know.
That was just an example. But so, we could do a scene right now.
No, I mean, I guess that's exactly what you're kind of tapping into is there is this skill that you have to build of, yeah, okay, I accept that's the role that we're playing here. But even though I know what the hell I would say if I had a son that was doing that,
sure.
For some reason I went, this feels weird to me. I don't know. I don't know what do I do with my hands? I don't know.
So funny.
Yeah. So I guess, to your point, man, I didn't mean to interrupt your spiel there. I just wanted to kind of
it's great.
Experience that with you and let you know that that's exactly what I felt just now.
So let me tell you this, Ryan. Remember the second rule of improv. Listen, there's no set rules, but these are like the kitchen sink things that you will hear if you ever take a class. But the next biggest thing that I will always tell people is there are no mistakes. And I will say this to life. Now, trust me, I have an ex-girlfriend, so sometimes there are better choices. But there are no mistakes. So no matter what you would have said or done with your hands, I would have accepted it as the truth and who you are and what you do, and then move forward with it. We would accept it and move forward, right?
Yeah. So that's kind of like a radical acceptance then.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because you have to accept the reality. So like if you, a lot of people go, well, I went to like my high school improv teams show, or I saw a college or a church group do improv, and it was weird and crazy and didn't make sense. And that's because people they weren't listening to each other, which is another skill that's really tuned in when you do improv. But 2, they didn't accept and truly say yes, right? So say the first person steps out in a scene and they go, sure is a beautiful day outside. And then the next person steps into the scene right next to them and goes, it sure is. I love being on the moon. Let's eat cheese, right?
Yeah,
And
that's disjointed. Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that it couldn't work, because there are no mistakes in improv, just like I would say there's no mistakes in life. Whatever happens is happening. Accept it and move forward. That way, our anxiety can come down. That way, we're more willing to step forward, and I'm not thinking about the past or not anxious thinking about the future, just accepting the right here, right now. If the next person would have listened to that person and just gone off of that, they could have said, it sure is nice outside today, and I brought a kite for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that way they just said yes, and then they added a little bit of information onto it. We also say in improv, and Bill Cott, who's considered, I love the guy. Bill is my improv mentor. He was on Saturday Night Live and The Ringer. If you got kids, you might remember him as Mr. Larry Tate from Wizards of Waverly Place. We're from the same hometown of St. Louis, and he's one of my closest friends out here in Los Angeles. But he always says, and I don't know where he got this from, but I always say it's from him, bring a brick, not a cathedral. Remember this in your life. This is another thing that improv taught me. I don't need to know the answer to every damn thing.
Yeah.
I don't need to do everything. Just like goals. When you get it as a clinician, like how can I set small goals? Right? I don't need you to like lose 1,000 pounds right now and solve everything that you have going on mental health wise. But if you can do small things a little bit, eventually those small grains of sand are going to add up. And in an improv scene, that is how we build things together using collaboration and the rule of the sand. We just, hey, Dad, here's a cupcake. Thank you, son. Blah, blah, blah. It's my birthday. Oh, now we have more information.
Yeah.
So we build it over time.
Yeah. In the mental health business, we call that systematic approximations, right?
Ooh.
And so to your point, and let's go back to the fear thing and whatever else. One of the ways in which people treat phobias, which is just an extreme fear of certain things, is you just get little bits of exposure to it. Just baby steps. If you're afraid of elevators, go into a building that there's an elevator, and then you just get a little closer, push the button. And then you step into the elevator. Just how long can you stay in there? 5 minutes? Great. Let's see if you can stay in the elevator for 5 minutes with the doors open. And then can we let the doors close? Those little bitty steps lead up to large gains. And each time that you go through those little bitty steps, you build a little bit more resiliency. You build a little bit more strength. You go, well, I thought that I couldn't do that, but then I just did. So what's the next objective? What's the next step? Yeah.
That makes sense. That's it. And that's really anytime you're learning anything, improv included, you're starting at the beginning and you're building it up. You're learning how to ride a bicycle.
Yeah.
And before you're up there.
I know people who've listened to my shows with enough time, they probably get tired of me saying this, but just pick something to suck a little less at every day.
I love that.
I play the guitar and I am no Jimi Hendrix, but just pick something and enjoy the process of sucking a little less every day. Because if you can put yourself out there and do it and learn a new skill or a new hobby, it really does build gains in your life.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, for sure. So we're coming up here on the 53rd minute.
Sure.
And I don't know, we haven't really talked as in depth as I thought we would about your professional pursuits at this point.
Okay.
So I know that you got yet again, you've got so many things going on. I feel I'm envious of your life, but talk a little bit about the 911 thing.
Sure. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm an actor. Listen, when you're an actor in Los Angeles, and you're trying to be even more of a working actor, you do whatever you can. Well, I am blessed yet again through my military experience, becoming an Air Force medic, and I use that experience on set. So I work with the medical director or the med tech advisor to certain shows. And one of those shows that I work on quite regularly is 911 on Fox. So I use my medtech experience as an on-set medtech advisor to the production to make things look real. Sometimes it's basically glorified background work.
You're still on TV, man. That's
sure,
that's
sure.
still pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, and I don't do a ton of background work, but the fact that I get to keep it's kind of fun because it keeps my chops up. I'm on set and around people, and I feel like I'm helping to make this. And this is probably just the medical nerd in me. We've all seen. Listen, every single veteran that's watching this right now has seen a movie, and they go, "That uniform looks like shit." Like we've all done that, right? So I do the same thing for the medical side for, to represent EMS as a whole. I also teach at UCLA part-time, thanks to my military medical education. Like I'm a clinical instructor for the Center for Pre-Hospital Care and the David Geffen School of Medicine. So it's pretty neat that I get to use that experience there. And then I apply it on film and TV productions as well. I did a lot with Code Black on CBS. My friend, she does a lot of this for different shows, so she'll be able to use me as best I can. When I'm not doing I was just going to say I do literally whatever I can. If you follow my social media, you'll see like Ryan is not kidding. I have so many irons in the fire. I always tell people I'm like my ex-girlfriend. I get around. So I just like I'm always kind of bouncing around and doing everything. I don't just do, film. Obviously I do film. I just shot 2 short films where I played a very beautiful older lady, completely redone. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I saw some of your commercial work too. Yeah, that's
commercials. For those of you that are big time on the firearms, if you're familiar with Brownells, I was blessed to help to put together 2 commercials for Brownells, one of which is still up on their website. Look up Duke Taylor Brownells on, I think Facebook probably still has it. I saw it the other day, and then it's up on their Instagram as well. But yeah, film, TV, commercials, kind of whatever's popping around, and wrote a sketch and got to play an alien on Jimmy Kimmel. So that was kind of, that was fun.
Yeah. It's funny, like Graham, which is another veteran actor that we interviewed here. He does some work for like NCIS New Orleans.
Yeah.
And there was, to your point, you're talking about the uniform looking jacked up. There was some actor, I guess that he was pulling the 8-point cover down really low, and it was like squishing it up.
Yeah.
And Graham basically said, "Dude, get the hell out of here. That's not the way that's
right.
It's worn.
It's not a baseball cap."
You're right. And that's kind of what the actor did, was like, "Well, I like wearing it that way." Yeah, well, you get your ass reamed if you were walking around with it like that. It's not authentic. You need to understand that anybody who has any just basic knowledge of the uniform is going to look at you and go, "Poser." Like, even though, yeah, that's funny. So do you get a chance to interact with any of the main stars from 911? Yeah.
Sure. Oh yeah. In fact, I mean, that is kind of what the job is.
Yeah.
Aside from doing my own stuff as a principal on these shows as either a guest star or whatever, when I work as a medtech advisor to these shows, I mean, fairly regularly, Angela Bassett, either myself or someone that's working on our team, they normally will have 2 or 3 real medical people that have the background knowledge who are helping out. Our job is to read the script ahead of time. My boss will break down what we need from the props department, and we will work with the cast to show them what the thing is. Hey, Miss Bassett, I saw here that you're going to help the firemen in this scene to give an IV bag to this patient. So what I'm going to have you do is you're going to spike it like this, and so we engage with them all the time. I've helped out on Lone Star a few times as well, and gotten to talk to Rob. I mean, we're always around them. Sometimes our scene doesn't necessarily necessitate that we need to engage with them or show them anything if they already know what they're doing. I mean, they've unloaded. It's something as simple as like how to load the striker, the gurney, into the ambulance. Like, if you don't know how to do that, you want to have somebody that's trained on how to do that, especially if there's a patient on it or an actor playing a patient, because you don't want to drop them. Like, so any of that kind of stuff.
Is Jennifer Love Hewitt as lovely as I hope she is?
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Yeah, no, you're right. So what advice would you give veterans out there who are looking to break into the industry?
Oh, hands down. And a great question, Ryan. If you or somebody you know wants to work in the entertainment business, whether that's film, TV, commercials, you're an author, you're a DJ, you want to get into like entertainment photography, you want to work security, either on a film set, at a studio, whatever. If you want to work in the entertainment industry or media industry as a whole, it doesn't matter what the job is. I don't just mean actors. I want to be very clear here. Check out VME, Veterans in Media and Entertainment. It used to be called Veterans in Film and TV. We're the largest group of veterans in front of and behind the camera. They will verify your DD-214 and your characterization of discharge to see that you qualify. VMEconnect.org will get you connected so that you can send in your stuff. There are chapters across the United States, and it is awesome. I serve on the leadership board for VME, doing our weekly calls and try to help vets to get mentorships, community engagement with different networks and different organizations that also connect in the entertainment industry to help vets to not only get work, but to get mentorships, to become a guide, to network with people. So it is awesome. And there's tons of free classes. Listen, if you are a vet and you want to get into the industry, that is the number one place to start.
Yeah, because some of you may be listening going, man, BJ seems like a larger than life kind of character, almost superhuman with his optimism. And, those impressions may be accurate on whole. There's still times, though, in which that may not be as true.
That's
and
very
so
true.
I kind of wanted to unpack that with BJ a little bit. So let's talk a little bit more, because you said something about you had never considered yourself to be depressed before, but all of these things were kind of happening in life at the time. And, I'm reminded of two things that we talk a lot about here. And that's number one, the diathesis stress model, in which one can kind of envision their mental health as a cup, right? And we have a certain bit of genetic contribution, that is the liquid that we were born with from our parents. And then the environment pours in additional liquid into our cup, right? And so disorder is the spillage over whenever we're receiving too much liquid in our cup and it can no longer contain it, right? So a lot of times people ask me, why is it that I developed PTSD and somebody in my unit didn't? They had the exact same experience as I did. Well, it's because your liquid level may have been different than your person in the unit. And that doesn't mean that environmental contribution that they got in their cup from that time in the uniform won't eventually lead to PTSD. It can be cumulative across time. So we talked a little bit while we were, I guess you'd say, on a break about what it was like to feel as if, okay, I need to go talk to a mental health provider at this point. Can we just start there? Because you had mentioned that your primary care physician, I believe, or at least somebody that was maybe your oncologist, had said, I think it's time to talk to somebody from mental health.
Yeah, it was absolutely my primary care provider at the VA. I was still relatively new to the VA, and previously I had never been to a mental health appointment in my life. I was 36 years old. I guess I had all the constructs of, I'm a man, I'm in the military, I work medical, I understand these things. I learned enough to know when it was objectively or clinically presented where it would be obvious that I would need to go. And a few months in of me being at the VA and them trying to sort out what my plan's going to be, right? Because I had so much going on and so many different specialties that I needed to see. And when my primary care heard me talking about I wasn't able to sleep, I was having issues there, and that I was becoming anxious for the first time in my life. I mean, like, obvious, biting my fingernails,
Yeah.
just, on edge. She said, well, you should go to see mental health. And I literally laughed in her face. I'm not, I wasn't trying to make fun of her suggestion. It's just,
Yeah.
it just sounded ridiculous because I'm like, I'm fine. And as you
Yeah.
said, like, I always try to be that positive, uplifting person. And I'll be honest, like, over the last probably 3 years or so, I've tried to get better at being very honest to myself and to people who may follow me as a source of inspiration, so that they are also aware that I struggle with the, things
Yeah.
as well. It's not all, hey, I booked this movie or I booked this
Yeah.
TV show and I don't have struggles and my cancer is fine and fuck cancer. No, I mean, there was so much still that was going on. And so I still try to share that. My primary care said, let me put in a consult. And I was dreading, wondering what it was going to be like to go to this mental health appointment. But I sat in and did the initial intake, and I knew it was going to be quick because I think it said like 45 minutes. So I was like, okay, well, that probably means we're not going to sit and like unpack everything, because I'd never been exposed like that. I never sat and shared to anybody the deep feelings I had, not only from my cancer journey, but my abandonment, and to also include some things that I saw working medical, where and experienced with unfortunately patients passing away, and having to deal with that. So there was a lot that I knew. I just really didn't know how it was going to work out or how I could verbalize it, because it just kind of happened like this. So I went in there, and I remember the provider's name to this day. And she was a psychologist, and she said, Mr. Lange, I saw your chart, right? And it seems like you've had a pretty hard last year and a half. And I just fucking lost it. I mean, I guess I felt a little, I even talking about it, like I get, chills, and maybe get a little teary eyed, but, I think to hear her validate that
it's okay that you had a tough year and a half.
Yeah, right. That I was dealing with some stuff, and here's a mental health provider who doesn't even know everything, but just based on the little stuff she sees in these notes already. And so we spoke, and I explained everything that I was dealing with. And I remember towards the end where I was like, I tried to just like regain myself, and I was like, but I'm cool, but I'm fine. I'm fine. She goes, no, Mr. Lange, I think that you have major depressive disorder. And I was like, okay. Well, like, what does that mean? What does the plan look like? How really, and I guess this was maybe me being nervous for my future. How will this look like publicly facing? How would this look like for licensure for me as a nurse? Does this affect, I had no idea. As a private pilot, how does this, I had no idea. So she initiated a plan, and I ended up going to see the chief psychologist there, who ended up over time shifting me over to some interns who were working on their graduate studies and working on their programs as well, and doing a lot of individual therapy. To that end, it was not only major depressive disorder, but it was anxiety and PTSD. And I think a lot of people go, well, PTSD, well, yes, I did, have some patients, unfortunately, who passed away, who sometimes I still can see and have had some reactions from, but it was mainly, I believe, from the medical trauma around not only my initial diagnosis, but the relapse and just everything that surrounds a cancer diagnosis. There was just
Mm.
much medical trauma in there that needed to be dealt with, and things are getting, I feel like there were just so many ups and downs, and I'm finally starting to like, work my way back up. Like I feel like I'm like in a big backhoe that like, or an excavator who went down and got a bunch of ground, and finally I'm coming up with all of this new ground. I'm not like getting deeper in this hole where I was for so long. And this is on top of many other things too, not just my cancer relapse, but my stepmother passed away Memorial Day of 2018. Unfortunately to her cancer, this is a year after my relapse. So there was some guilt that like, I survived and she didn't, and I will say this, and this is kind of a beautiful thing, but I was able to use my skills as a medic to take care of my stepmom while she was there on hospice care at the house. This is my stepmother who raised me, who stepped in and when I was 3 years old and raised me until I moved out of the house. So even though she was young, it was kind of just a circle of life moment, and I was honored to be able to help take care of her along with my family her last few days. But there was that, and then I got let go in the relationship, which I mentioned earlier, and I got let go from my part-time job that I worked at forever. I still didn't know the military, so there was just so much mental health adversity, challenges that I was dealing with. So it's not all fun and games, but I was trying to pretend like it was. I was lying to myself.
Yeah. So the second part, besides just that diathesis stress model, there's another hypothesis too that comes to mind, and it's the stress sensitization hypothesis. So one of the major contributions to this was a guy named Post. Like he came up with it, but he looked at depressive episodes, right? And so he noticed that before a depressive episode, specifically the first depressive episode, there was just a huge stressor that happened, right? And within that first stressor that triggered a depressive episode, he noticed that every episode beyond that, the stressor severity did not have to be as severe. So you have this first one that may just be the life-altering, life-shattering event. And then it kind of lays down tracks, right? Like railroad tracks. So once that has been laid down, the next stressor doesn't have to be as severe to then trigger a depressive episode. And with each subsequent stressor, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller to that can be something as simple as daily hassles then can cause depression. And I'm saying that this really is something that you need to address head on, because it won't just be that existential crisis, quote unquote, that people can't just ignore these things, because it will continue to happen if you don't seek care. And with each time that it does happen, you may feel as if your control or power in the moment may be undermined more and more to where you feel as if there is no relief ever coming. And there's a hopelessness that can set in because you see it happen so many times at this point. And so that's why I just kind of wanted to encourage, or number one, I wanted to applaud you for taking the courage to not only talk about it, but go seek out, because it is something that we talk a lot about here. I try to use Vet with a Mic as a way to demystifying the counseling and mental health process, so that people realize that you can go into it with the right expectations for it, and that increases the likelihood of it being successful for you. If you walk in thinking that it's just going to be magic and you're going to be cured after one session, you're going to be disappointed, right? And that it does take a lot of work on your end to make sure that your mental health gets better across time. But there's also this, don't wait it out, right? Don't wait and see. Turn into it, utilize the resources that are available to you as a veteran, like the VA. The VA is not perfect, but damn it, man. The VA does a lot more than they get credit for.
That's true.
And you're going to have people are bad at their job sometimes. You may come across somebody that's bad at their job, or maybe they're just having a bad day or a bad week. You know, put them into context too.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give up on your own mental health. Keep trying, keep enduring, keep going and interacting with the system, because the alternatives are far worse.
You have to be your own
Agent,
patient.
advocate,
Yeah, exactly. You have to be your own patient advocate as well.
Yeah.
And to take care of yourself. That is absolutely a fact.
Yeah. Now, for those of you who may be wondering, like, well, what does depression look like? We talked a little bit about it. This changes in sleep pattern, you know, either sleeping too much or not enough. You know, a lot of things that people don't really consider either is weight gain or weight loss. That's another one. Yeah. And which I know you and I have talked about that one specifically. Yeah, for you. And, you know, just a general depressed mood, recurrent thoughts of death. That's another one. So there's a general cognitive kind of fog that comes over people too. They may not feel as sharp when they're depressed as before. There's psychomotor agitation and psychomotor retardation, which basically just means either A, you feel like amped up, or B, you feel like you're moving in concrete. So there's a lot more to depression than people really think of. It's not just depressed mood, you know, that so people can be like, well, I feel fine, but you only need 5 out of the symptoms. You don't need them all. Right. So I would say that if you're struggling with something, or you're even thinking that you're struggling with something, please don't wait. Don't take a wait and see attitude. Even if it takes the VA a month to get to you, there can be some feeling of control that you exercise, knowing that, well, I made an appointment.
Yep.
So I know that if nothing else, in a month, I'm going to be seen. And that can at least provide you with a little bit of short-term gain.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, I went from a place where I had a lot of mental fog from the chemotherapy.
Right.
But what I later realized, a lot of that mental fog, which still persists to some degree to today, but a lot of that after the main effects of the chemotherapy wore off, I was in a mental fog and had cognitive issues a lot because of my depression, which I had to address.
Yeah.
You know, and as an improviser, that was hard on me.
Detrimental, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was very challenging to deal with that. I should also mention, and I, you know, just talking about throwing stuff out there in case anyone has ever felt it, I was so depressed at points, especially after my relapse and then being, you know, dealing with all of these other things that happened. But for the first time in my life, not only was I feeling depressed, but I had never thought of harming myself prior to this point. I'm not saying that I had a plan or anything, but what I often did think about was, and maybe it's just because I was sick and I was just fucking tired of just feeling the way that I was feeling, and feeling sorry for myself, and feeling sorry that, like, you know, the way that people thought about me and whatever. But I could remember riding my motorcycle a few times and being like, it would be okay if I just wrecked my bike right here and the car behind me ran me over. I'm not saying that I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
But I thought for the first time, like, I was so close to feelings that I had never felt before, that those things scared me. And in a weird way, it also kind of gave me a little bit of comfort. I know that sounds really weird, but because I was experiencing new things and I felt that I could, assuming I knew I took care of myself, that I can control myself so that I didn't go that far over to do such a thing.
Yeah. You know, there are some patterns that people who may be depressed tend to display. And, Beck, who is the founder of the cognitive therapy, he called it the negative triad. Negative self, negative world, negative future. So if you're starting to feel shitty about yourself and you're not cutting yourself any slack, and you're seeing that the world is just a dark place and it's always going to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
Those things, problems are always going to occur. But when you're locked in that negative triad, they feel permanent, that there is no escape to it.
Mm-hmm.
They feel personal because you failed, not I didn't do well on a test, but I'm a failure, right? So you ascribe these fixed, immutable characteristics to yourself that leave you no way of escape. Because if you fail, okay, that doesn't make you a failure, right? If you lie, does it make you a liar? That it removes the context or the nuance from your life and just keeps you there. And of course, these problems are a direct result to you. So there's an inappropriate acceptance of blame and guilt for things that are not appropriate to you. So if you're out there and you're feeling, I don't know, I mean, I've never really considered it that way. And you're, for 1 second, you're starting to feel hopeless and you're starting to feel that you're the problem and that the world is a terrible place and it's always going to be that way. You need to start seeking services now. Do whatever you can to reach out to people, because that is not going to correct itself. You have to have a diabetic needs insulin.
Yep.
And that's just that we have to reframe how we think about these things. They're not, cancer, to your point, is never going to go away on its own. It needs interventions. And mental health, look, stressors can come and go. Things can overwhelm your resources. So I'm not trying to paint with too broad of a brush. We go through things like divorce, but your mental health, that cup level is going to change. Seeking out therapy helps restore the balance in your cup. It helps take some of the liquid out and give you a little bit extra time. Can't say that something bad is not going to happen again, but it definitely gives you resources to deal with it.
That's very true. You mentioned cognitive behavioral therapy, and that was something that I had never done before, but that was obviously a big chunk of what I had to do as part of this treatment plan. And so I want to say for 6 months, I met every week with one of the providers who, well, the biggest thing I learned was the negative thoughts that I had. And you hit it right on the head. The negative thoughts that I had to myself. I'm a failure. I'm a piece of shit. I'm lazy. All of these things. And then to be able to challenge those thoughts. And I don't remember what it's called. You would probably know, but she told me, I just don't recall. But when I was when I was writing,
as opposed to having diarrhea.
Yeah, right. The code brown. Yeah. I was writing down, some of these thoughts I was having, and then you realize that you have these recurring, regular, negative thoughts, and these were the things that
is what they've been called before. Yeah, but thought distortions, irrational beliefs, they're all pretty similar. Yeah,
that's going through all of that and breaking those down, and then learning to challenge these things, which I still deal with it.
Yeah.
I still, and that I think feeds into the cycle of me eating bad, because I don't drink and I don't smoke, but what I do is I stress eat, and then I overeat, and it feeds this stupid circle. But again, I'm still challenging myself. I'm still learning, and I'm still trying to deal with this on the regular. But to be able to challenge myself and realize that was probably the most valuable thing that I learned, aside from validation from a provider. Of course, now the acceptance is number one. Now, how do I change the behavior, and how do I learn how this behavior looks? That is what I found most valuable to my experience going through the mental health providers at the VA.
Yeah, right. Look, challenging those thoughts takes practice. And when you're engaged in them, when you're activated is what I like to prefer the term. I don't like the word triggered, but when you're activated, those negative thoughts feel so damn accurate. They feel like the most truest things ever said. And it's only whenever you put a little distance to that you can look back and go, oh, that's silly, right? That was a silly thing. Just because I failed on a test, right, doesn't mean that I'm a failure, to just use an example. One of the things we talk about, which is from the book Feeling Better by David Burns, which is a great book for anybody out there. He's a clinician, and he's just got a lot of cool things. The book's like this thick, but there's like exercises and things that you can use in it. So don't be too overwhelmed by it. But he
so Marines can read it, is what you're saying.
yeah. Well, there's coloring books, and I'm sorry, my Marine brothers. Anyway, one of the things he says as an exercise is to just take out a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle of it. On the left side, just write down all of those negative thoughts, all of them. However they come, just unadulterated, uncensored, just write them down. And then on the right side of the paper, try to come up with a more reasonable or nuanced perspective to that thought. I'm a failure. So on the other side of the page, I did not perform as well as I would like to. And what it does is there's a practical reason why it does it. Is the brain is a system that only one side at a time or one part at a time can be activated. It's an energy conservatory system, pretty much, right? Because it's an electric chemical organ. That's what it uses, electricity and chemicals to communicate between neurons. But when you do that, the part of the brain that is negatively oriented is humming. Woo, woo. That's the left side. But when you use the more neutral or more nuanced position, it tells that part of the brain to power down, and the part that is more nuanced comes on and says, well, let me think about this in a different way. The thing about it is, it's not just enough to try to actively say it in real time. There's something therapeutic about writing it out.
Right.
There's something about putting pen to paper.
I agree.
And then whenever you look at it after you've done this exercise and you see how silly all the thoughts are on the left side, you go, why did I believe that? Why did that feel so accurate and true at the moment? Because that side of the brain is powered down and the other side's powered up, and it's able to see how silly and one-dimensional that looks, because that part of the brain was in full effect. It was just humming, and it felt so true at the time. So we talked about that as a potential exercise in some of the episodes before. So if anybody's out there listening and they're experiencing some time in which they're feeling those thoughts, do that exercise. Draw a line down the middle. On the left, just write them all out. On the right, try to come up with a more reasonable alternative on the right side of the page.
Good exercise.
I do. I love that book. David Burns did a really great job with that book. Feeling Good.
How many books do you have, Ryan?
Well, I look at my bookshelves over there. Not as many as I'd like, but probably more than I need.
Sure. When's the last time you read a play?
That's the thing. I don't read as much fiction. I don't. I mentioned, like, just in the other day, I was having a conversation with somebody about the play by Shakespeare, Henry V. Right?
Oh yeah,
that's what it is, right? And I was talking about Falstaff and like Hotspur and how, I felt at a certain point in my life I had gone through that transition too. I'd gone through that process of, stop abdicating my responsibility and ascend. take up your throne, so to speak, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I mean, I still read things like that. It's just it comes less frequently. Yeah, I'll say that.
I find myself recently, and I don't know if this is because as I'm getting old, and I also suffer from some executive dysfunction. So I found that out thanks to doing some neurological testing.
Mm.
There's some executive function issues. But cognitively, it's been harder for me to read, and this may be because, to be clear, comprehension. Like I could read a teleprompter and knock out of the park and have no idea what the hell I just said. So, and
Yeah,
that
reminds me. Sorry, I know this is not funny. It just reminded me of the Anchorman.
Oh yeah, totally.
What was the other movie with Bruce Almighty?
That was yeah. When he was reading off, when he was putting it into the
teleprompter. Yeah.
That's true. But and I feel that way. Like when I read a book, it's harder for me to just do the comprehension, even studying and things like that. Here's another benefit to the VA. Thanks to going through and doing all that testing, I was able to get an assessment on the issues that I was having, so they can put that into a learning plan, so that when I went and started to use my post 9/11 for the first time as an adult,
you have accommodations.
Yes, and which helped me. I'm not saying I needed all of them, but I had options to where that anxiety didn't get to me, where I was like, I have to read this thing, 17 times to understand what it's saying. And then that's eating my time before the test. And so that
and
was
you avoid it as well. It's like, because know it's going to be hard, so you just avoid it. Yeah. I used accommodations in my university as well, because and I fought it for a long time, thinking I don't need that. But yeah, it really did make things a lot easier whenever I finally just gave in and utilized the resource. I really try to practice what I preach here. That's the thing. I have struggled with a lot of the things that we talk about here, feeling disconnected from other people, not wanting to utilize certain services, not wanting to accept that there was a problem. That's the reason why I talk about these things candidly, as somebody who has also been trained, within mental health. So this is not, there's no stigma here. This is life. This is real life. And you don't have to suffer in silence or silo yourself away from the things that are available to you. Yeah,
that's true. I think a lot of people, especially veterans, and I'm mainly speaking, at least in my experience, a lot of the older veterans of past generations. My uncle's a Vietnam veteran, and I told him about my experiences so far at the VA, and he's like, "Oh, it's great that you're getting help and all this stuff." And my aunt came over to me and she goes, can you talk to him about getting over to the VA? And I go, he doesn't go to the VA? And she was like, no. And I said, hey, why aren't you going to the VA? And he goes, oh, that's for people that that need it. Mind you, he's older. He's getting up there in age. He might be needing the healthcare support. I went, you are the reason why it exists. And I'm not saying to use it, but maybe just have access, like just get connected as a healthcare enrollee, so that what could be there when you need it. Should you need hearing aids when you're 80 years old, and that was one of the examples that she was like, he really needs the hearing aids. And I'm like, why didn't he go to the VA?
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't know what's out there. And so many people get so nervous about the system. And I'm like, you are the reason why it exists.
Yeah. And I guess to your point, people always say, I knew what I was getting into whenever I went into the uniform. Well, so what does that not mean that when you're in your 60s, 70s, and 80s, that what does that mean? That based on a decision you probably made at 18, that means what? You're just not allowed to need help.
Right.
And you're right. There is some generational gaps in that regard, but there still happens a lot of the post 9/11 OIF, OEF generation. Because trust me, I feel conversations every day with guys and gals trying to get them to go and establish their claim, get get established as a patient.
Sure.
I have to walk them through the process a lot. As an advocate, that's one of the things I do.
Yep.
Because if I can help you avoid a pitfall that I fell into, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that that doesn't happen to you. And if it takes me speaking just rather, transparently about PTSD or mental health issues generally, to put it into context that I'm not judging you over here, buddy, that if you need help. And if it's as simple as, look, you may have a high deductible for your private insurance. The VA will pay off your high deductible if you just use them a few times a year. Just go for your normal checkups and they pay off your high deductible. This is something that, and then if you don't want to use the VA anymore, great. The rest of the care can be used, at your private doctor, but they're there for you. Prescriptions, whatever. It's so much easier. There's a resource available to you, but I can harp on that stuff forever.
That's me too. Yeah. I'm right there with you. Quality of life, just to have it for that is the most important thing, whether it's a hearing aid or you might need a cane, whatever it is, just know that it's there, and that's why it exists. And that's also the same reason why I tell people who often feel uncomfortable. You were talking about some of the younger guys who might feel weird. And I say, join an American Legion, like not only for community, but that was the initial advocacy group that helped create the VA, that stood up and lobbied for the Montgomery GI Bill. That's get involved so that you can help be the voice as well and learn what's out there that you might not know about.
Yeah. Because, to your point, the World War I guys got shafted, like majorly shafted. And I mean, they tried. They marched on Washington. They tried to get it. And they were left just with empty promises, and no one took care of them. And so we owe it to the legacy of our ancestors, our fathers, and our brothers and our sisters who served, to utilize and act as our own agent of change within that system.
Sure.
You don't like it, participate.
Exactly.
That's what you got to do. Anyway, so BJ, thanks for coming back on with us for a second and just unpacking a little bit more about your mental health story, because I do think that you are a larger than life character, and you just seem as if nothing would bother you. Just everything would bounce right off of you. And it really helps to hear people understand that underneath the current, there is.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. That's that whole tip of the iceberg. You only see the part coming out of the water. That's when I remember seeing that meme for the first time, that graphic, and I was like, damn, that is the truth, man. Everything else be under the water. That's the stuff that, you really just don't know. And that's why it's so important to check in with people, to really check in with people. Yeah. So, Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, no, of course. As always, if there's anything I can do for you, man, just let me know.
Same here, brother. Same to all you.
Yeah. So like we've said once already, if you've enjoyed this conversation, please spread the word about it. Let everybody know about the great conversations we have here with veterans doing awesome things in the community, and however life finds you, I hope life finds you well. Till next time.